Welcome, friends. This will be another video based on some insights and concepts and ideas that have come to me, and I will share them to make your journey along this great awakening that is taking place on a global scale for all of humanity a little bit easier, a little bit wiser for each and every one of us. So we'll start off today with the concept of finding your voice. Now, there's a difference between having a conversation between two individuals, and there's a difference between proclaiming. It has been said before that finding your voice gives you your true essence, gives you power within the words, and this essence of finding it comes from your heart. And normally, when we have a conversation, when we're debating, when we're just casually going about conversations, it's normally spoken from the throat. We're not too conscious of it. The ego, the image, the idea is currently speaking to individuals, or the conversation that's taking place between one another, rather than you as an individual human being proclaiming your truth, and it just happens to be heard, or it just happens to be directed at the other individual. Now, how does this usually work when someone says, "How's your day? How are you doing? Where do you work? What have you been up to?" We don't really think about what we're hearing. We have already pre-recognized and pre-memorized these kind of conversations, because these are the usual conversations that go on for a very long time, and our mind, the human computer, is used to it, and it kicks back that information very quickly. It responses, not really too consciously thinking about what we're saying. And because we're not thinking about what we're saying, we're casually just throwing back words in an unconscious way from the throat chakra, or from the throat essence of speaking, which is not us proclaiming this is what our state is. Now, the state of finding one's voice, as I have come to understand it, is through understanding that when we speak, it should not be directed at a human being, but should be directed at essence. It should be directed outwardly, because when we speak, it's the only time our inside ideas, our inside concepts, the essence of us is being vibrated, as vibration is all sound, into this 3D realm, the matrix world, or the 3D world as we call it. Most of us do not understand how powerful our words are, how powerful the things we proclaim or speak are. And these are the things that eventually, over time, when we understand frequencies, dimension, energy, and vibration, they affect our human essence as much as the thoughts we have about ourselves affect our human essence. So there's a difference between throat speak and heart speak. Normally, the average conversation between human beings, which you can call dead beings or masses, or robots, which is a casual office talk, casual water cooler talk, usually happens from the throat, where there's no real consciousness. We don't really care about what's happening, but it's the pleasantry and the habitual concepts that's taking place. And most human interaction happens amongst that area, so there's no true filling of the soul, there's no true meeting of the minds or sharing of our essence. But true conversation happens when two individuals, they're not trying to make a point, they're not trying to actually say something, they're just contemplating, they're going over what they feel, what the essence, and it comes from the throat. Now, one thing I've noticed is, rather than speaking to an individual, it's a one-on-one conversation. Try, even if you're not speaking to someone, proclaiming it. It is a different direction in which you're speaking. Normally, when you're talking to an individual, they say, "How are you?" You say, "I am good." And you're directing that "I am good" response towards the individual that asked you that question. However, in your mind, in your knowing essence, and in the way you speak, rather than directing the "I am good" at that individual, you should say "I am good" as a proclamation. Consciously know that that person that asked you the question is listening to the answer that you're giving, but it is not technically directed at him. In that essence, you change the way you talk, you change the direction in which your energy and your essence and your proclamations goes. And this doesn't just have to be done through casual one-on-one conversations. You can make these proclamations, these speaking, these thoughts that you have in your mind into this outside world, even when you're by yourself or in your group. But that conscious understanding, or that identifying in your mind, your logical mind, to not direct your conversation at the individual that you're talking to. You might be facing him, you might be responding to them, but the actual saying, the actual essence of the speech that's being sent out should be on some level. Now, this is going to be as hard as always breathing deep, because breathing exercises also releases your mind, also increases your awareness, releases the dopamine, or releases the essence of breathing, and brings one to a calm state of being. Now, most people, it's hard for them to breathe deep and consciously, even when they're talking. So, on that same sense, you have to also have awareness of being proclaiming the things that you're saying rather than just casually throwing out words directed at an individual. It does make a big, significant difference in the way you interact, in the energy behind the words, and the power that it has when you're speaking it. Now, most individuals, we have a certain avatar, certain idea, certain concept, certain story that we tell about ourselves. This is based on our upbringing, based on our conditioning, based on our trauma, based on basic habits and background story, which is pretty much what it is. Most of us casually just assume this is just who we are. There's nothing major about it. This is what our story is, and going forward is what we have to change in the present now so that we can change, we can better ourselves, we can become more successful, we can become more open, or we can become more powerful, rich, money, and all these other things. But that story we tell ourselves is more important and it dictates more about us than we realize. In the ultimate sense, that story doesn't really truly exist. It is just memories and a past timeline based on habits, memories, and history, which dictates the current moment. And once you see through that, you are completely operating in the I am presence, the here and now, which does not have a history, which does not have a past influence, a river current that guides its current moment. But to get to that point, we have to understand the story we tell about ourselves dictates who we truly are and how we think. Most basic average narrative would be that we are a citizen of a country, we are a human being, this is our background, we are children to certain parents, and then this is the timeline, this is the age gap, either teenager or adult, young adult, and then we are either a father or a child, or we are part of a group. This is the career I have, so this is my standing in society. I'm a father, I'm well respected, I'm an influencer in the social media world. All these things, especially in this current day and age, affect us and how we think about ourselves. And how we think about ourselves affects the energy and frequency we put off. And then that affects the further interactions and conversation we have. Apologies, folks. Hopefully, that didn't blind you too much during your listening stages. I'll put in a note. Hopefully, you've read the notes that around the 7:48 mark that there's going to be a loud voice in the header. If you haven't, apologies once again. So, as I was saying, the idea, the story, the narrative you tell about yourself, even if it's a fantasy, even if it's an imaginary tale, it does affect how you think. And that is why there's such a strong propaganda. There is such a strong essence to divert your mind, because the human mind is the most powerful, most imaginative force in existence. It is, as metaphysics, the CIA, and these other folks reported, it operates in 11 to 12 dimensions, and it gathers information, gathers knowledge, and it affects various things in all these different eras of life. So once we can tap into the true power of a brain, true, it is only a computer on the physical 3D realm with neurons firing, memories, the past, imagination, but on a higher realm, which was the old ancient understandings, the old awareness past the ego in the I am presence, it is one of the most powerful supercomputers ever created. Now, mankind is trying to create AI intelligence, so imagine what God has created. And on that note, think about what science is perpetually doing. Your background story, as with basic history, once you can destroy the history of a society, you can change and alter the past and the present and the future, because you completely destroyed where they came from. You gave away all their stories, anything to believe in, anything to look back on, even though looking back on does create a certain side of dependency. But with science, what they're telling you, what they're doing, is that you came from fish, monkeys, and just random evolution. You are a speck, a dust in this imaginative creation of life. You absolutely mean nothing other than the material, basic desires of lust, hunger, sleep, providence, money, gathering, and enjoyment. That is the essence of human life, and that is what majority of the human beings existing on this planet through suffering or through the Western world of capitalism and advancements believe. And because of that underlying belief story, the insignificance of our existence, we are then limited to the imaginative power that we are capable of tapping into, and then we are limited to the lives that we live. If there are 7 billion human beings, as they say there are, about 6.9 billion of them truly believe they are insignificant, are incapable of doing anything. They have to go along with what their parents, culture, school, society taught them. They have to work, they have to study in school, they have to get the vaccinations, then they have to go through their teenage years, then they have to go to their young adult years, get a career, pay for a house, get a mortgage, and they have to have children of their own. Then they have to raise their children, even though they have trauma that they haven't gotten over, so they pass over that generational trauma to the children. Then they get into the old age where they have to act wiser, they have to be promotional, they have to get a career, they have to get a standing in society, and all these underlying programmings or the matrix codings that has been encoded into the human mind is what is operating. But if one stops and thinks and adjusts the background story, the essence of what they tell you you are, then it completely changes you as a renewing of a mind and completely alters what you think you are capable of doing. Now, some people see a random individual, bringing in modern scenarios, a random individual walking up to a completely random girl, talking to her, having fun, getting her phone number and walking away, and another individual might look at that and say, how did he do that? How does he have the balls? How does he have the courage to randomly approach a random individual? Because based on those two individuals' upbringings, based on their past history, based on how they view themselves, the confidence they have, and the essence and energy they put off, they don't care as much as the other individual does. The other individual thinks too much, or the other individual has a certain idea, image about the female that he is incapable of approaching. In that essence, that female idea, the image that one individual is contemplating on, overthinking, unable to approach, is not the real female in itself. The individual who's unable to approach has a small idea of himself, doesn't have confidence based on his past history, past trauma, and the image he has about himself, and also this falsified image he has created based on quick glances, quick awareness of the female standing there. Now, the individual that approached that female with confidence, cockiness in his mind, usually the ones that can approach, don't really care for the female, don't really put them on a high regard for themselves. They are confident, they could care less. The experience that they've gone through shows them that a good confidence, that a good word spell enacted on that individual can quickly alter the conversation. And that is all based on past history, which creates the essence, which creates the confidence, which then gives you the drive to do what you need to do. Now, if you amp that up to a larger scale, we as individuals are trained to think we are nothing. We are based on our careers, we are based on our upbringing, we are based on our lifestyle, or the certain small little group cult group that we have been invented into. And therefore, that's why there's rulers, and you are supposed to see yourself as a servant to these rulers, and you are not on the equal footing. But if you truly inwardly accepted and brought into attention that you truly are a creation of God, and there truly is, as a human being on this planet, 7 billion of them, if you believe that standard, there is no difference amongst each of us based on this material world, but in God's eyes, we are all truly creatures, powerful essence, and we are inheritance to the kingdom of God. And once you internalize that, once you understand the true essence of that, not just based on stories that you read or based on the logical falsity of it, but you actually feel that essence, you actually understand it, then you could walk up to the richest, most powerfulest human beings on this planet and not see them as their image, not see them as the rich, powerful man or the movers and shakers or the evil and corrupt, but you see them as what they are, another living being in a creation of godliness. And you're seeing them on an equal footing, not for the images, because you've seen past your own image. You've overwritten that programming and you actually see what you truly are in the I am presence. So since you can see that in yourself, you're able to meet other human beings, other individuals for what they truly are, rather than the mask, the persona, the identifiers, the imagery that they make. This also helps one, to lead off a little, to openly say in this PC culture what the truth and what it is that people would like you not to say. Some people cannot call out certain individuals, cannot point out certain things. They call it judgmental or hate speech. But once you realize an individual who proclaims their mask, who proclaims their identity, is not truly that individual, then you are incapable of hating the thing that you see past. Once you understand your true essence and you know that there's a bigger true essence behind you, then the name, the character, the habits, the background, the culture, the genetics, once you see there's a bigger being behind that in yourself, you've discovered this. And that means you know for a fact that this exists in every other human being you meet as well. So you won't have a problem pointing out things, calling things out, saying things that are not supposedly allowed to be said, because you won't be fearful and you can't be shamed into saying that you are a hateful person, you are a judgmental person, or you have hateful ideas and concepts, because you can confidently and courageously say that, no, I see you for what you truly are, and I don't say these things as a judgment. I say it simply as the fact that the sky is blue. You cannot hate someone for saying the sky is blue just because it is so. In the same way, you cannot hate someone for saying this is so. And that is a way of helping in this modern world, seeing the story that you tell yourself. Now, there's other stories you can also pre-program your mind to be. You are a star seed. You are the child of God. You are here as an alien being on a mission to bring up the consciousness of the human race as this great awakening is happening right now. And all these other concepts can be built in the background hardwiring of the human soul. But each individual has their own story and they have to go inwardly to find it and discover it. But that basic firmware, the automatic store function of I'm a simple creature who was born to parents, who has a teenage years, who has a background, who has an education, then has to have a career, then has to have a standing in society. That is the firmware that is downloaded to you on a program disk when the store sends it to you. It is the baseline photograph that when you buy a frame, that the basic crop out picture that's sent to you, that is not you at all. That is just simply those being run and those being put onto the human brain based on non-conscious living and autopilot existence. Once you see past, or once you stop going on autopilot, deactivate that and start taking control of the airplane or the plane or whichever one you want to use, then you then get to decide what story you want to tell yourself. Now, many will say you can't just change your story. You can't just change your energy. You can't just change whatever essence you tell yourself because that is not normal. That is not how things are done. You have to go along with the herd. But that is usually done because those are too afraid or too unconscious to be able to do that to themselves, do not want people escaping the boiling pot, because then seeing others escaping the boiling pot gives those that see this the urgency and the essence that they themselves can do it too, but they're either too afraid, too lazy, or not ready to, and that frightened them, and that frightenedness revokes or invokes them to fight against those that are escaping the system. On that note, however, there's also the evil ones, the essence of those that would prevent those from rising away from the trauma, rising away from the system that has been built into their minds from escaping, because every individual light that is sparked brings the system to its collapse, the negative system to its collapse that much sooner, and obviously they do not want that. So those are the things you must look out for. But at the end of the day, it is that hardwiring programming system that you tell about yourself. Think about it as if you were a computer engineer and you were creating a program, a Microsoft Word, an artificial intelligence, or just an automatic bot inception. You encode into it that this machine must do this at this time in order to react to that time. In that same way, your habits, your reactions, your fears, your lusts have been programmed into you based on habits, and it's so strongly built into your core to believe that no, this is me, this is my essence, this is my nature, not that this is an outside programming that has been instilled into my spirit and I've so strongly identified with it that it's become me. As soon as you realize that you are watching the programming and you recognize it for the programming, you don't have to do anything to escape the programming it. The very essence of observing and perceiving the fact that it is a programming that's making you act a certain way, that makes you think you are a certain person or have a certain essence, the very observation and recognition that it is a programming on a hard drive makes you completely disregard, or the strong hold of that programming completely disappears. That is why breaking habits like smoking or lying or being lustful or addicted to porn or all these different things that are coming up, do not try to fight the programming itself. Observe the programming, find out where it comes from, what the program is installed on, and the very pondering of it, the very looking into it, slowly defeats or takes away the strong essence, the stronghold that it has on you, the being that is observing this programming. Now, the person that's observing it is also part of that programming, because as you're observing, you haven't completely gotten rid of the programming. So the observer still has a little bit of essence, a little bit of perfume of that whatever you're observing onto it, But as you observe, as you understand you're observing it, that whole entire continual circuit of observation, critical thinking, pondering, does what needs to be done more effectively than trying to go to an AA or trying to fight your habits or trying to go on nicotine patches or all these other things to try to break a strong, very profound attachment or stronghold they have on your spirit. I will be ending this video on those two powerful notes. I hope you've enjoyed it, folks. As I mentioned, I'll be manifesting it constantly in these videos, but this will be put in an audiobook format and also a book to help others and guide others that are looking for some insights, that are looking for some personal experience wisdoms, which I tend to have a certain way of describing and putting my own little spin, perception, ideas and concepts into these discoveries that are old and main ancient societies and insightful people have always discovered these things. But in the current day and time, in the current essence in society, it's always good to have a Babylon language speaking of the old wisdom knowledge, so those that have been brought up in the Babylon system may understand it and may free themselves from it. But as usual, this is just logic coming from the outside world. You should never worship it. You should never think this logic is true. You should do it yourself, and everything that's being spoken here, you will understand that you yourself must figure out. Because understanding something from the outside world, the outside field as logical knowledge, does have a certain effect to you, like reading a book, reading history, reading something intellectual. But when you discover it for yourselves, it affects you on a much more core level, on a much more essence level, and that has way more of an impact than just reading something and logically agreeing with it. Now, the logical agreeing with it will give you some wind behind your back, it will give you some enforcement, it will give you some confidence to start digging for yourself, because you've always had these ideas in the back of your mind. Reason you're listening to this, the reason it's jiving with you is because you're of the same frequency, you're on the same essence. You've just never heard it done like this. You've never heard it said this way, in a way that you completely understand it. And now that you have, it gives you more confidence, boosts your morale to do your own self-search, which is the most important thing. Make sure to check out my Patreon and become a monthly subscriber so that you can fund the book that is coming out, or the audiobook Essence, which can be mass produced and sent out to many individuals. Until then, this will be posted on all my social media sites in order to assist and guide those to better themselves, improve themselves, and hopefully we may bring about peace on earth as the Great Awakening is taking place, as the evil is being purged out, and as consciousness is rising.